Up until Joe Biden was forced out of the 2024 race, Kamala Harris, the current vice president, has been the laughingstock of not just Washington, but also the press and citizens all over the country. She's been known to be kind of an idiot. In fact, in my lifetime, I can't think of a bigger embarrassment or someone as incompetent as her put into any position of power within any White House administration, left or right, with perhaps the notable exception of Joycelyn Elders, who is the original DEI appointment. She was appointed as the Surgeon General back in 1993 under Bill Clinton, and she was known for saying some of the most stupid things, like making safer bullets. You might think I'm joking, but sadly I'm not. Take a look at this.
We can decide that we've got to keep the guns out of the hands of our children.
So far, so good.
We can make safer weapons. We can make safer bullets. We can...
Yeah, so that was kind of the go-to thing for Joycelyn Elders, and she was eventually forced out after she suggested that masturbation could be part of sex ed to prevent sexually transmitted diseases. Now, this, of course, was kind of stupid, and it also angered conservatives and embarrassed Bill Clinton's White House so much that the administration pressured her to resign, which she did. Which then takes us back to Vice President Kamala Harris. Since she took President Joe Biden's spot as the Democrat candidate, she has hidden herself away from any live scrutiny. No press conferences, with I think one exception, a 2-minute press conference during a campaign event in Michigan, which she immediately walked away from as soon as conversations got interesting. And then her last sit-down formal interview was back on June 24th. And since then, she has not scheduled any major interviews or press conferences. Now, the complicit mainstream media has, for the most part, turned a blind eye to this, mostly because the mainstream media is also entirely a wing of the Democrat Party, and they are working overtime to shore up their candidate of choice. The Harris strategy is pretty clear here. Harris's campaign, they are defending her approach, stating that they are focusing on reaching voters through strategic and creative methods such as paid media and ground organizing rather than traditional press interactions. Now, that's all well and good, but you can't dodge the public forever, and this has drawn some pressure. First, you've got pressure from the Republican Party. The Trump-Vance campaign ticket has capitalized on her media avoidance, and they've been emphasizing how they are out and about and engaging the media constantly. And they do this to draw a contrast. And this strategy is putting additional pressure on Harris to increase her media presence.
You've now asked me 3 questions about comments that I made 3 years ago. I wonder what Kamala Harris thinks about the fact that she supported policies that opened the American southern border. I wonder what Kamala Harris thinks about the fact that she lied to the American people about Joe Biden's middle facility for the office. You are interviewing me, Dana, because I respect the American people enough to sit down for an interview.
I appreciate that.
Kamala Harris has been the nominee for 3 weeks. She hasn't sat down for a real interview.
Believe me, we are asking. You're not going to get a disagreement there.
But the point is, Dana, you've got me for 15 minutes or however long you have me. We should be talking about public policies that matter. How are we going to lower inflation? How are we going to reduce the cost of food and housing? How are we going to close down that southern border? We've talked so little about that. We've talked a lot more about a sarcastic remark I made 3 years ago. I think we should talk about the issues that most Americans care about.
There's also been criticism from commentators who are arguing that this undermines the democratic process by limiting public scrutiny and accountability. And some critics, including media outlets, have accused her of dodging tough questions and relying on controlled environments to communicate her message. And there is merit to all of this. Kamala Harris is even avoiding talking about any of her policies that she would put in place as president, with the one notable exception of copying Donald Trump's announced plans to end tax on tips.
Because when I get to office, we are going to not charge taxes
June
on
19th.
tips, people making tips.
Eliminate taxes on tips for service and hospitality workers.
August 10th.
Because when I get to office,
So there is that, right? But the real reason that Kamala Harris is hiding from the public, I think, has less to do with policy and getting tough questions about her policies, and more about because the more she opens her mouth, the more the public dislikes her and the greater her cringe statements become. We have a lot of examples of these, and I'll give you a couple. So here's Kamala Harris talking about the significance of the passage of time.
The governor and I, and we were all doing a tour of the library here, and talking about the significance of the passage of time.
That's good.
Right? The significance of the passage of time.
Right.
So when you think about it, there is great significance to the passage of time in terms of what we need to do to lay these wires, what we need to do to create these jobs. And there is such great significance to the passage of time when we think about a day in the life of our children.
Then there's this.
Now, no longer are you necessarily keeping those private files in some file cabinet that's locked in the basement of the house.
Explaining cloud storage here.
It's on your laptop, and it's then therefore up here in this cloud that exists above us, right?
And then this is her famous unburdened by what has been.
I can imagine what can be and be unburdened by what has been. You know? What can be unburdened by what has been.
What can be unburdened by what has been.
What can be unburdened by what has been. What can be.
You get the idea. And then AI.
Part of this issue that should be articulated is AI is kind of a fancy thing. It's, first of all, it's 2 letters. It means artificial intelligence.
I did not know that.
Ultimately what it is it's about machine learning.
Yeah. Okay.
And so the machine is taught.
Right.
And part of the issue here is what information is going into the machine.
I feel like she's talking to 5th graders.
That will then determine, and we can predict then, if we think about what information is going in, what then will be produced in terms of decisions and opinions that may be made through that process.
So we get the idea here. Kamala's struggle with her foot and mouth disease, her vapid statements, is just a taste of her incompetence. There is a reason that we've hardly seen Kamala Harris these past few years as vice president. The Biden administration swept her off into some godforsaken corner to avoid her constant embarrassment that was being handed down to them. She was proving to be a huge distraction for the White House, so they just, goodbye Harris. Her campaign knows that her best chance to make it to the White House is to not let her talk off script. She needs to only be on safe teleprompter events whenever possible so that no one can ask her anything that might put her at risk of saying something stupid. However, this does also risk alienating voters who are expecting transparency and direct answers from their leaders. Now, it's possible that the plan here is, screw that, let's just get as many low information voters and rely on enough people who are going to vote for whatever candidate has the D at the end of their name. So it could be that. So as the campaign progresses, it will be interesting to see if all this mounting pressure on Kamala will force her to woman up and step into the fray. So we'll see. From the To Be Frank show, I am Adrian. Thanks for watching this episode, my friends. I will see you all in the next video.